Hi, Leo Sun and Rising. Welcome to your May 2025 Astro Update. It's Rena here. So I'm going to start by talking about a transit on April 30th that is important because it's at the end of the month and it's also Venus going back into fellow fire sign Aries. So Venus is direct by then. And because I'm recording this when Venus is still retrograde earlier in April, but on April 30th, Venus goes back into Aries where it began the retrograde, and it goes out of its shadow on May 15th. A lot of these planets are, well, I shouldn't say a lot, but several planets are coming out of their shadow in May, during the first half in May, and then we can experience that real sense of forward movement. So for you, you might be interested in, on May 2nd, Mars comes out of its shadow in Leo. And so that's the degree, the 6-degree mark, when it retrograded way back in early December. So we're talking about an almost 5-month process. This is huge for you, Leo, because now Mars is coming up to speed in your sign, and this should energize you because you've had a lot of retrograde and shadow aftermath. So when Venus goes back into Aries on the 30th of April, for you, this is going to be the 9th house. This is a house of, so when Venus retrograded, it started off in this 9th house and went back to the 8th house. Venus can be like actual money. And also, Venus is romantic and the 9th house is the law. Sometimes Venus can be what you value. So if you, or even like in terms of religion, if you are kind of like on the fence, Leo, and you're in some kind of like spiritual, what would you call, it could be even in your private life and your private beliefs, but if you plan to do something professionally with some kind of healing arts type of work or light worker type of work, you may be going back and forth between the more conventional form of God interactions, which is the 9th house, or the more mystical or metaphysical with the 8th house. And your values, what you value, can play into that in terms of, the 8th house is more about your personal path. Also, anything to do with, like, if you're going to a university or you're trying to, the 8th house can be loans, like student loans, and the 9th house could be maybe you had to do something with that. Or you just kind of thought better of it. Maybe you thought, I don't want to do this. This really isn't what I want to do. I was just going along with the program. There could be so many possibilities. By the way, the 9th house, to have Venus here, could mean falling in love with somebody from another race or country or anything like that. Because that is, the 9th house can be long distance travel, which, by the way, you may be engaging and you may have the money for it now. On May 4th, Pluto goes retrograde at 3 degrees of Aquarius. Aquarius is your opposite sign and your opposite house. The 7th house is also called the descendant, and your descendant, like, for instance, I'm like afraid to even say this because I get so confused easily, but let's say your descendant, the cusp of your 7th house is 5 degrees of Aquarius, then this will fall in your 6th house, not your 7th. But I'm not doing the reading for all these different types of people. So I'm going to just talk about how it affects the seventh house. And how it affects the seventh house, I mean, Pluto in the seventh house can be sometimes treacherous in terms of relationships because Pluto can bring into a person's life a controlling partner. And by the way, even a Leo person can fall prey to this. I mean, think about somebody like Whitney Houston. Poor Whitney Houston. She was a strong woman to a certain degree, but when she met Bobby Brown, things changed. Although I don't want to say anything against him because I don't know that he was necessarily controlling. They may just have been, you know, bad for each other in terms of like bringing out the worst habits in each other. But I'm just saying that she became very immersed in him. And, like a Leo woman can be like super strong, but then in her private life, that's where she kind of becomes like a little bit like, well, I don't want to say all in all cases, but sometimes that's where the strong woman or strong person, strong Leo, can kind of become submissive or otherwise fall prey to somebody who is controlling. So I'm not saying that everyone who has Pluto in the seventh house is going to be met with this fate. I believe I have a video up on the transit of Pluto in the seventh house, so please check that. Basically, what this can mean is that when Pluto goes retrograde, you're going to go within and do that soul searching or that shadow work about any kind of situation, even if there is something in the outer world that is plaguing you, that you're looking to yourself, not to blame the victim, but to get beyond the concept of the victim, because that's not really helpful. That can be disempowering. See, the seventh house, this can be also legal affairs. So when Pluto is in the seventh, or even like let's just talk about marriage. Pluto in the seventh can be like that. Even if you have like a good relationship, you can have these power struggles in the relationship. Maybe there's a particular issue that you're clashing on with your partner. And, you had Saturn here recently, within the last 5 years. So you may have already had this test to your relationship, and this is kind of like really going to go deep, with your relationship if you're currently in a relationship. So the thing is that even if there are power struggles and you believe that the other person is the perpetrator, you have to look at yourself and say, well, how do I contribute to this dynamic? It could be as simple as giving into that person or becoming like kind of matching them and digging in your heels. Leo is a fixed sign, so you may like kind of get very stubborn about it, and instead of like trying to understand that person, or maybe it is time to leave, maybe it isn't a good situation. There are so many possibilities. The seventh house is the house of open enemies, or what do they call it? Like like people that are clear enemies in your life. And Pluto here can really bring this up. Like there could be this serious situation where you have to stand tough. Sometimes, who knows, it could be because you're succeeding so much. Think about it. Think about like how people, even people that are in your own family, can try to keep you back, hold you down. So when Pluto is here, in general, you may kind of like go, wow, they're really like doubling down now. trying to have power over me. And you can either match them with that negative energy or you can transcend it. And it's up to you. And so with this Pluto retrograde, Leo, think about if this is true for you, where you have found that you've had a lot of opposition lately and you're like, what is up? Look inside yourself and say, what part of me is power hungry? Is there a part of me? Because I'm going to tell you something. I hate to say it, but Leo is a sign that if it is imbalanced, it can be like a petty tyrant. It can be that sign that tries to be, king of the world. And it is, I do like connect Leo with royalty, but the ultimate sense of royalty is being queen or king of your own life, not trying to rule over others. Leo is a natural leader. There's no question about it. But some of the best leaders, you wouldn't even know it because they're not trying to be bossy. They're trying to inspire others with their own behavior. And Leo is such a warm sign that when you're in the groove, you can really do it. It's just like you have to step up to the plate. On the 10th, Mercury goes into Taurus, fellow fixed sign. This is in your 10th house of career. So Mercury, because Mercury has been delayed, you haven't had it yet in your 10th house. Now it's there, and you may be communicating with people in positions of authority. You may be, because it's the top of the chart, you may be in some way in your own, I don't know, doing public speaking or something where you're the authority figure. You have the expertise that you're kind of teaching others or something along those lines. On the 12th or 13th, depending on where you live, we have a full moon at 22 degrees of Scorpio, another fixed sign and the opposite direction. So for that, Leo, that's the 4th house of home and family. A full moon here can be different things for different people. It can be, the 4th house can be your past, your childhood. So you could have like an understanding of something that happened to you when you were young. So this is a water house because Cancer rules it in astrology. So it's kind of like a psychological thing. And it could be about like psychological insight into your childhood, some aspect of it. It could be finding out something about your mom. Some people think that the 4th is the father, so one of your parents, learning something about them. There could be some kind of closure or some kind of ending with home and family matters. So closing on a house, selling a house, that's also a possibility. And the 20th, the sun goes into Gemini, and this, for you, Leo, is your 11th house. This is a house, Leo is the life of the party, and the 11th house is the collective. So you might be getting into a period of time where you're socializing a lot more. Now, you do have Jupiter here already. So you may have made a lot of friends in the last year, a lot of contacts in the past year. And the sun here is just adding to the party. On the 24th, you have Saturn going into Aries. So once again, we're talking about that 9th house. And there's something about the 9th house that is going to be where you're exerting discipline and where you're building a structure. But sometimes Saturn can be kind of testing a situation. And in the 9th, this could be a test of faith, like something happening where you have to fall back on your philosophical beliefs, your religious beliefs, and be able to weather the storm. Like there's nothing else you can do but do that. And I had Saturn in my ninth house, and it's one of those things where I didn't really think about it until after the fact and saying, oh, okay, well, maybe this event was connected to that, and it's it's a very interesting thing, but I think that some of you may really solidify plans to do some kind of career because Saturn rules the 10th house of career. So wherever it's transiting, that could be an area where you take seriously enough to make it into a career. And this is the God house. So you might be doing something with religious matters or traveling, and Saturn being career related. Maybe you are working abroad in some way, in a foreign country or whatnot. The very next day on the 25th, Mercury goes into Gemini, into the 11th house, and that can be about communicating with friends, maybe contacting them if you haven't seen them in a long time, and just touching base. The next day from that, and for some this will be, so Americans probably the 26th, and then others will be the 27th, new moon at 6 degrees of Gemini in that 11th house. Again, you do have Jupiter here, and you do have time for Jupiter to still be in that house. I think Jupiter goes into Cancer on the 9th of June, something like that. So I was just saying, not too long ago, I was talking about how there was an astrologer who was talking about when you have a new moon in your 11th house that you get to make 40 wishes. She passed away, but I have her book. And I was saying in this other video that I was trying to make a list of 40 wishes, and I couldn't. I just gave up because that's a lot, And so you might want to try that. It might be kind of fun. I think her I don't know where she got her theory from, but it was about the 11th house being the luckiest house. Well, I've always heard that the 9th house, which is ruled by Jupiter, is the luckiest house. But in any case, it might be fun because the 11th house is a house of hopes and wishes, long-range goals. So it makes sense that at the new moon that you might want to try coming up with multiple wishes, but you can make them kind of small. Some of them kind of like easy to accomplish too. And then maybe it'll feel more doable. But this can also be about the people that you are associating with, meeting new people, initiating anything that has to do with humanitarian efforts in some cases. That's another thing that the 11th house is about. Okay, Leo, that's what I have for you. I hope that this resonated. If you would like a private reading, I have package deals and I have individual readings on various topics, and you can find out more information at the link below. Thanks for listening. Bye.